What's going on, everybody? It's AG here. Week 3 of the college football season is in the books, so I'm going to go ahead and reveal my Week 4 top 25. Not a lot of movement at the top, but in the bottom half, like that bottom 5 in particular, 2025, we did have some movement at the top. Like I said, not a lot of movement. Now, we did have some question marks. We'll get to that here in a little bit. Let's go ahead and get into it. Starting number 25, we have Syracuse. Kyle McCord. They've looked good so far this season. Haven't really played anybody spectacular, but they have a lot of talent. I'm kind of curious to see how their schedule plays out, how their season plays out for them with that manageable schedule. Number 24, Rutgers. They have looked good so far as well, led by Kyle Monunga at running back. Led the Big Ten in rushing last year. They have a really manageable schedule. No reason this team can't almost go undefeated with their schedule in the Big Ten. Number 23, Boston College. They're coming off a loss, but I thought actually that loss kind of actually made them look more impressive in my opinion because I'm pretty high on Missouri. But they went to Missouri, played with Missouri, and was a competitive game throughout. Almost had the dub there. Kind of had them down at some points. But Boston College, going into the season, I didn't necessarily think they'd be a top 25 team, but I thought they would be competitive with Thomas Castellanos at quarterback and Bill O'Brien coming in as head coach. He's had a lot of success previously at other stops. So I was kind of curious to see how Boston College would look, and they've looked good so far this year. Even despite losing this week, I thought that actually bolstered their resume a little bit. Number 22, South Carolina, same situation. So they go and barely lose to LSU. Almost got the win there. Probably should have got the win there, to be honest with you, despite a couple brain farts there at the end. And actually, their win over Kentucky looked even more impressive as well, with Kentucky almost beating Georgia. So South Carolina moves into my top 25. I did not have them in previously, but even with the loss here, they move in. Number 21, Notre Dame. They look good this week over Purdue, but Purdue is the worst team in the Big Ten. They're not very good. But Notre Dame looked a lot better, obviously, coming off that loss, and they're going to have to probably win out with that Northern Illinois loss to crack the college football playoff. Number 20, Michigan. They still look bad. They're going to have to figure some things out come really next week. They got USC next week, I believe. So that's going to be a tough matchup and a top 25 matchup that should tell us pretty much what we need to know about Michigan because they haven't looked spectacular so far. Number 19, Utah. They've got a tough matchup this week as well against Oklahoma State. We'll know a lot about them. Now, their key is going to be, is Cam Rising healthy or not? If not, it's going to be tough for them to win the Big 12. But with him, I think they definitely could. Kansas State, they get a big win over Arizona, and I wasn't super high on Arizona, but Kansas State keeps winning. They're doing what they need to do to keep rising up the rankings. Number 17, Iowa. Nothing too impressive this week, but still barely lost to Iowa State last week. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt there. And I think Iowa should be a top 25 mainstay throughout the year as per usual. Number 16, Iowa State bye this week, but they had that win over Iowa last week. We'll see when they get into the Big 12 play how they look. 15, Oklahoma State. They did what they should this week. Now we'll really know about them this upcoming week when they play Utah. If they get a big win there, they should move up in the rankings a little bit. Ollie Gordon hasn't really got going just yet this season. He's going to really need to get going if they can beat Utah. Number 14, Oregon. Finally looked like Oregon probably should, but I'm still a little hesitant to jump on the hype train. I had them in my top 10 at the beginning of the season, but with how they looked at the beginning of the year, I'm not going to move them up just yet until they get into the Big Ten play and kind of prove it a little bit. 13, LSU. They struggled with South Carolina, but I think that's still a quality win. They got lucky to escape with the win, but they did get the win regardless. Louisville, bye, but they've looked good so far this year. Clemson, same thing. They had a bye, but their only loss so far is to Georgia, and I'm not sure too many teams are going to be able to play with Georgia, even though they did get handled in the end. Going into halftime, that game was close. Number 10, USC. They've got that win over LSU to kind of bolster their resume. They play Michigan this week. They could move up a little bit. Tennessee, they look good this year. They're doing what they need to, and they look good this week as well. Kind of ran up the score a little bit, though, so I'm not really going to give them credit points for that. Miami, same situation. They did what they needed to do. They got the win big. But that Florida loss looks worse. That Florida win looks worse and worse each week. So I don't know how to necessarily rank Miami until we get into conference play. Missouri, close win, but a top 25 win regardless. So I'm going to give them more props for beating a top 25 team close than I am Tennessee blowing out a team that is crappy. At least Missouri scheduled a tough team that, is a power conference school. So I'm going to give them the edge there over Tennessee and Miami. Penn State. Now, the only thing with them is that West Virginia win, even though they handled West Virginia's lost to Pitt this week, so that win isn't having as much, resume boasting as it would have previously. So Penn State, I'm high on Penn State, but I don't know. I considered them move them down here, I'll admit, below maybe Missouri, Miami, and Tennessee. But I'm going to give Penn State still the edge there. Number 5, Ole Miss. They're doing what they need to do. They've got a pretty manageable schedule. They should be in the playoff this year. Alabama looked good this week. Struggled a little bit with USF last week, but I think USF's a solid team. So they're still doing what they need to do. We'll see once they get to Georgia what they're really made of. 3, Ohio State. They were on a bye, but they've looked good so far this year. Number 2, Texas. Okay, so Texas actually considered moving up to number 1. Quinn Ewers got a little banged up, though. We'll see kind of what the timetable is on that. But good news is for them, I think they're going to be fine without him in the meantime because Arch Manning looks legit. He looks like the truth. He looked good in this game against UTSA. They put up a lot of numbers, did what they needed to do, looked how they should, and I even considered moving them to number 1. But number 1, I'm going to keep Georgia there. They barely get the win over Kentucky. Kentucky's defense really shut down Georgia's offense somehow. Really low-scoring game. Georgia's defense played good, but still that game came down to the end because Georgia's offense couldn't really get anything going. Now, I've said all year I thought Georgia would lose a game just because of how tough their schedule is. I think they'll lose a game still and make the playoff. I thought this was going to be that one, not going into the week, but once the game started, it was like, yeah, it seems like this might be the game where it happens. But they squeak out the win. The reason I still got them at number 1 is just that Clemson win. I think that's still a solid win regardless. So they keep at number 1 this week. But who would you add to this list? Who would you put in the top 25? Let me know. Comment down below. Make sure to like this video and subscribe.